Welcome. Today we're going to be taking a look at Coffee Traders. This is a 2 to 5 player action point area majority economic game where you take the role of coffee trading companies in Belgium in the 1970s. You'll be building up and supporting cooperatives from Central and South America, Africa, and Asia, fulfilling contracts and delivering to coffee bars, trying to have the most successful coffee trading company. How do you have the most successful coffee trading company and win the game? By having the most victory points at the end of 3 periods. Now that we know what the winning condition is, let's take a look at the components, setup, and how gameplay works in Coffee Traders. Now let's take a look at the components. This is for the deluxe edition of Coffee Traders. In Coffee Traders, there are a lot of symbols, and in the rulebook, you'll have a list of those symbols. First, we have the main game board. On the left side of the main game board, you have your coffee bars, which is where you'll be delivering coffee during the 5th phase of a period. This is based off the cooperative that you see in each box, as well as the number that you need to deliver. And the majority in each column will give you victory points at the end of the game. At the bottom of the coffee bars column, there is a 6, which you would place 6 of any kind, and then you would gain the animal counter. Underneath the coffee bars, you have milestones. There will be 3 milestones for the entire game. Whenever you complete a milestone, you'll place a marker on that milestone on the highest points available. Underneath the milestones, you have the cooperative victory points. This shows you how many victory points you get for having a majority in each cooperative. In the center of the main game board, you have your cooperatives. This is where you'll be placing plantations, buildings, workers, donkeys, and trucks. Around the edge of each of the 5 regular cooperatives, you have trading houses. This is where you will place traders and gain stock counters or a coin and gain you coffee during the harvest phase. The round circles in each of the 5 regular cooperatives are your town centers, and they will contain workers. The rows in each of your 5 regular cooperatives are for plantations. The number in the center is based on the level of plantation. There are places in between that will require the placement of donkeys. At the top of those rows, you have places to place trucks. The second row plantation will allow you to go up the Arabica track of that cooperative, and then placing a plantation in the third row will allow you to go up 1 on the Arabica track for that cooperative, as well as gain an animal counter or a wild animal counter. The other boxes in each of the 5 regular cooperatives will be for buildings. You'll notice symbols inside of each that will allow you to place that particular type of building in that space. Some of the boxes will allow you to go up the Arabica track for that particular cooperative. Each cooperative has their own symbol, and you'll notice these symbols referenced on the coffee bars location and the Arabica track, as well as on your player board. The last cooperative is the Sumatra cooperative. This is used as a wild coffee, and you only gain this type of coffee if you have cats in this cooperative. And you will see this coffee referenced on the coffee bars and on your player board. On the right side of the main game board, we have the Arabica track. You'll be going up this track in different cooperatives based on the actions that you take. The first time that you reach the second step on all 5 tracks, you would receive a trader, and you would place them in your traders and contractors area. The first time that you reach the third step on all 5 tracks, you would receive a truck to add to your company supply. Anytime you go to the 4th space on any of the tracks, you would receive a coin. If you are the first person to go to the 5th space on a track, you would receive a donkey. The 6th place would gain you 6 victory points at the end of the game. And then the last space, which is only available for 1 player, would gain you a bonus of 4 victory points at the end of the game. Underneath the Arabica track, you have the contract bonus. This will give you an Arabica counter when you complete a contract of that letter. Underneath that, we have the period and phase. And then at the bottom right, we have the turn order track. Next, we have your player boards. The player boards have references to each of the 6 phases. In the work phase area, you have a company cube section. Underneath the company cubes, you have your actions. Next, you have your company supply. Next to that, you have your bonus supply. You are allowed to take 2 of the 3 options in this box every period. Underneath that, you have your plantations section. You'll be going left to right in each of the rows. Next, you have your worker pool. This is where you'll place workers. Next to that, we have the traders and contractors. This is where your traders and contractors will be placed. And then underneath that, you have your buildings. These are placed going top to bottom. On the right side of your player board, we have your warehouse. These have places for warehouses going across the top and down the right side, which allow you to store coffee at the end of a period. A warehouse at the top of a column would allow you to store 10. A warehouse at the end of a row would allow you to store that many of each coffee. And at the bottom, you have a place for stock counters of each type. Next to the warehouse, you have the contracts. Next to the contracts, you have an in-score reference. And on the far right, you have a counter track. When you gain counters, you would place them on the bottommost available space. And if you collect a duplicate, you would place it on top of the existing one, and then advance on that particular cooperative's Arabica track one step. Next, we have plantations. They will go in the plantation section on your player board. Next, we have farms, warehouses, fair trade posts. They are placed in the building section on your player board. Production stations. They are placed on the building section of your player board. Hospitals. This is placed in the building section on your player board. Trucks, civet cats, donkeys, traders and contractors. They will be used to place in the trading houses, as well as allow you to construct buildings. Company discs, action cubes, trade counter, coffee cubes. These are to mark your amount of coffee of each type in your warehouse. Scoring markers. These are used to mark in the coffee bars and on the milestones. Next, we have the period and phase marker, milestones, contracts. For each of the contracts, they have a letter in the top left corner. The bottom left corner will tell you the number of players this contract is used for. Stock counters, Arabica counters. These are used as contract bonuses. Animal counters, -3 victory point tokens. These are used when you cannot refill the bonus supply on your player board. Workers, coins, a score pad, 2-player rulebook, and then finally your rulebook. Now let's take a look at the setup. We're going to be setting this up for a 3-player game, and setup takes 13 general steps and 15 player steps. Step 1, place the main board and get player components. Place the main board in the center of the play area, and then players will choose a color and get their color-specific components, a set of coffee cubes, and 4 black action tokens. Step 2, place stock counters and coins. For each trading house, place a coin on spot 3, 4, or 5, depending on the number of players. Then place 3 corresponding stock counters on their depicted spaces in each of the trading houses. Step 3, place workers. Place 6 workers in each town center. Step 4, shuffle and stack Arabica counters. Shuffle the Arabica counters face down, and then create a stack face up on each contract bonus space. The number that you will place face up is depicted on each space. Step 5, place animal counters. Place 1 animal and 1 wild counter in each of the corresponding cooperatives. Then take a set of animal counters and randomly place them on the 6th space in the coffee bar. And then lastly, place 1 wild animal counter on spaces 3 and 4 on the final column in the coffee bar. Step 6. In a 4 or 5 player game, place your wild stock counters. You'll place a number of wild stock counters next to the coffee bars equal to the number of players. Step 7. Create supply pools. Create supply pools for the remaining coins and workers next to the main board. Step 8. Place the period and phase markers. Place the period marker on 1970 and the phase marker on 1. Step 9. Create turn order. Shuffle a company disc from each player and place them randomly on the top turn order track. Step 10. Sort, shuffle, and place milestones. Sort the milestones based on their letter A, B, or C. Shuffle each stack and place 1 from each stack on the corresponding spaces on the main board. Step 11. Place company discs. Each player will place a company disc at the starting location in each row on the Arabica track. Step 12. Place a trader and truck. Each player will place a trader and a truck next to the main board and the Arabica track. Step 13. Place civet cat. Each player will place a cat in the Sumatra cooperative. Now the player steps. Step 1. Place your player board and action cubes. Place the player board in the center of your player area, and then place 3 action cubes in the company cubes area, and 1 to the side of your player board. In a 4-player game, you'll place the action cube of your color in your company cube area. In a 3 or 5 player game, that cube goes back to the box. Step 2, place plantations and farms. Place your plantations and farms on their corresponding spaces on the left side of your player board. Step 3, create company supply. Place 1 donkey and 3 coins in your company supply area. Step 4, create the bonus supply. Place 3 coins, your 4th black action cube, and 1 trader in your bonus supply area on your player board. Step 5, create the worker pool. Take 2 workers and place them in your worker pool. For a 5-player game, you will only get 1 worker to place in your worker pool. Step 6, fill traders and contractors. Place 3 traders in the trader and contractors region on your player board. In a 3-player game, you'll place 4 traders. Step 7, place buildings. Place buildings on their corresponding spaces on the middle left of your player board in the building area. Step 8, place the trade counter. Place the trade counter with the 4 to 1 side up on its corresponding space next to the warehouse. Step 9, place your last warehouse. Place your last warehouse in the top shaded space on the warehouse track. Step 10, place coffee cubes. Place the coffee cubes of their corresponding track on 0 in the warehouse area on your player board. Step 11, get animal counter and cat. Take a set of animal counters and give a random counter to each player. Place that counter along with a cat next to the contract area on your player board. In a 4 or 5-player game, you'll place a trader in that area as well. Step 12, sort, shuffle, and place contracts. Sort the contracts A through E, shuffle each stack, and give 1 at random to each player to place on their player board. Then give players an F contract that matches the number of their E contract. Step 13, get starting coffee supply. Gain the coffee off of your F contract. You will get 2 for the topmost coffee on that contract and 1 on the others. You would advance the cubes on their track, and in a 5-player game, you would get 1 step on your Arabica track for the topmost on the E contract. Step 14, place plantations. Place your remaining level 1 plantations on the main board based on your F contract. The topmost variety on that contract would go in the center of row 1 on that cooperative. The second would go on the rightmost of the matching cooperative, and the third would go on the leftmost of that matching cooperative. When determining left and right, it is using the name orientation on the main board. Step 15, place the remaining components. Place your remaining player components next to your player board. Now let's take a look at the gameplay. A game consists of 3 periods or rounds. Each period or round consists of 6 phases: work, workers, trader and contractors, harvest, contract, and refresh. Now let's look at each phase in detail. Phase 1, the work phase. In turn order, players will perform one of 4 cooperative actions or pass. You may choose an action multiple times. Keep in mind that once you pass, you are done with actions for this phase. The 4 possible actions you can take. The first, add a plantation to a cooperative. Plantations are ways to harvest coffee and score in-game points. When adding a plantation, you would place the action cube on that action. Then take the leftmost plantation from one of your 3 rows on your player board, keeping in mind that the level of plantation must match the depicted level on that space. If you are placing a plantation to a cooperative that you do not have any plantations, you must first place a worker from your worker pool in that town center. The first time in a new cooperative must be a level 1 plantation and on the first row. When placing a plantation, you would pay 1 for a level 2 plantation, and you would pay 2 coin for a level 3 plantation. When placing it on the second row, you can place a level 1 or 2 plantation. Keep in mind that it has to connect to your row 1 plantation, and there cannot be another player's donkeys on that connection. If it is empty, you must place a donkey from your company supply for that connection. Also keep in mind that you can only connect one row 1 to one row 2. For the third row, you can place a level 2 or level 3 plantation. You can connect using donkeys. You must have 2 of your donkeys present or placing them from your company supply. You can connect with a truck to a row 3 plantation. You do not need to have a row 2 plantation to do this. A row 1 is required for each that you choose to connect with a truck. You would place it on a spot with no opponent's donkeys, placing the truck above your plantation. Then you will gain the bonus depicted under the placed plantation. Also, if you placed a row 2 or row 3 plantation, you would go up one step in that type on the Arabica track, and if you placed in a third row plantation, you can get an available animal counter. When placing plantations, if you unlock a farm, you would pay 1 coin immediately to place it in a cooperative of your choice. If you cannot place it or pay for placing it, it is removed from the game. When you place all of your plantations, you would take a cat and place it in the Sumatra cooperative. The second available action in the work phase is to send workers to harvest. These workers will help harvest coffee during phase 4. You'll place your action cube on the workers action, choose a cooperative, and place 1 worker on each player's plantations. You place a worker on the lowest level plantation without a worker. If there are not enough for every player's plantation, the active player would decide who gets the workers. If there are more in the town center, they would stay there, and if it ends up empty after this action, you would add 1 worker to the town center from the supply pool. If you placed a worker on another player or player's plantation, you would go up 1 space on the Arabica track for this cooperative. The third available action, breed a donkey. This is where you would gain donkeys. You would pay 2 action cubes to take this action, so you place 2 action cubes on the action space, take a donkey from your general supply, and place it on a pathway in a cooperative above your plantation. The fourth available action, income. Place 1 action cube on this action, and then you will get to place a civet cat from your supply to the Sumatra cooperative, or take 2 coins from the general supply to your company supply. Keep in mind you can use 2 of 3 bonus supplies each period. Once all the players have passed or placed all their action cubes, we move to phase 2, the workers phase. During this phase, players will simultaneously place workers from their worker pools onto their own plantations in any cooperative, starting in row 1 before you go to row 2 or row 3. Once everyone's finished placing their workers on their plantations, in turn order, if players have any workers left, they can place workers on other players' plantations. For each plantation that does not have a worker, that player would pay a penalty based on the period. In 1970, it's 1, 75, it's 2, and 80, it is 3. And those are paid in coins or going backwards on the Arabica track, or a combination of both. Keep in mind that players cannot go back if their disc is on a coin or donkey space, but they can go back out of a victory point space. If a player has to pay and they cannot pay, then they must remove their highest placed plantation. When placing a worker on another player's plantation, you would gain 1 step on that Arabica track. Once workers have been placed, we move to phase 3, trader and contractor phase. In turn order, you'll perform 1 of 3 trader and contractor actions, or pass. The first available action is to place a trader. You'd pay 2 coins and place 1 trader on the first position in a trading house of the player's choice. You would gain a stock token to place at the bottom of the corresponding warehouse track. Then all players have a chance to piggyback on that action by placing a trader in the trading house without paying for it. This is done in turn order. There are a number of places available to place in the trading house depending on the number of players. In a 3-player game, the 3rd player can choose to place a trader or take the coin. In a 4-player game, the 4th player has to take the coin. And in a 5-player game, the 5th player has to take a coin. The second available action, hire a contractor. You'd pay 2 coins, and then you would choose the topmost building from one of the columns, replacing the building with a contractor. Then you would gain bonuses for the building constructed. These bonuses can be depicted on the main board as well as next to the building on your player board. Then players have a chance to piggyback on that action. Players do not have to pay for the action, but they must play in the same location, either on their player board or in the same cooperative. Then they would pay 1 coffee of their choice to the active player, but they must have that coffee to pay beforehand. The third available action is to remove a trader. Pay 2 coins, remove 1 trader from the game, and advance 2 steps on the Arabica track. These 2 steps can be split. Once all the players pass in a row, we move to phase 4, the harvest phase. Each plantation with a worker harvests 2 coffee. In a 3-player game, they will harvest 3 coffee. The 3 coffee will be of that cooperative type. And then for each cooperative, you will follow 4 steps. Step 1. Each player who owns a fair trade post in that cooperative gains 1 coffee. Step 2. The player who placed the first trader in that cooperative trading house will gain 1 coffee. Step 3. Going first trader to last trader in the trading house, players will gain 1 coffee, and then it would begin again until there are no coffees left, or each player receiving 5 during this step. Then you would adjust the storage in your warehouse. Step 4. Players with 4 in all of the 5 coffee varieties immediately get a cat and place it in the Sumatra Cooperative. In a 3-player game, you have to get 6 in all 5 varieties. Then you would get coffee for your Sumatra Cooperative. You would gain 1 for each cat of your color and then return them to your general supply. Then we move to Phase 5, the contract phase. In reverse turn order, players will choose to fulfill a contract or make a delivery to coffee bars. Players can also pass. Passing is permanent in this phase, and turn order adjusts based on when you pass. The first player to pass will go first, the second player second, and so on. Keep in mind that the orange or hexagon coffee received from the Sumatra Cooperative can be used as a wild. Also, you can trade 4 to 1, purchase any of the other 5 coffee varieties for 2 coins in 70 and 75, and 3 coins in 80. Also, you can spend 3 different stock counters for 1 warehouse construction, or 5 to construct 2 warehouses. When choosing to fulfill a contract, you would pay the coffee, remove the contract, and gain the bonuses. The bonuses are located under the contract and in between contracts. When multiple are listed with a / the player would choose. When a bonus is building, it is a free action. Coins, donkeys, and trucks go to the company's supply. If you complete a row when you're completing a contract, you would get the row bonus. This would allow you to place a trader in your area, place a cat in Sumatra or the company supply if it's the final round, or get the animal counter to place on your counter track on the right side of your player board and go up 1 step on that Arabica track. Then you would take the top Arabica counter from the contract bonus area of that letter and advance 1 step on the corresponding track and place it on the counter track. When you choose to deliver to coffee bars, you would deliver a number of the type and then reduce that in your warehouse, and you would place the scoring token on that amount in that bar and gain the bonus above. Then you can make a second delivery to the coffee bar during that turn, and if you choose to not make a second delivery, then you would immediately pass and move your turn order marker. Once all the players have passed and moved their turn order markers, we move to Phase 6, the refresh phase. The refresh phase takes 7 steps. Step 1, return all contractors and traders to their player board. Step 2, return action cubes to your company cubes. If it is a 4-player game and you used your color-specific action cube, it would go back to the box. Step 3, reduce coffee based on your warehouse storage. You can rearrange warehouses to your liking during this step. Step 4, get 1 coffee for each stock counter, ignoring capacity limits. Step 5, refill the bonus supply with 3 coins from your company supply. For each coin that you cannot fill, you get a -3 victory point token. Then you would take the coins from the general supply. Step 6, move the turn order up to the top track. And then Step 7, refill the coin of each trading house. If during your turn you reach a milestone, you can place your scoring marker on the highest available space on that milestone. Then periods would continue until the end of the 3rd period or round, and we would go into the final scoring. Final scoring takes 9 steps. Step 1, score cooperatives by quality. The plantation value sum, plus 1 for each building, and plus 2 for each hospital. Then the cooperative would score based on your quality value. The highest would get 16, second would get 8, and third would get 4. Keep in mind there is no 3rd place for a 3-player game. Step 2, score company supply and worker pool. Workers, donkeys, and cats are worth 1 victory point, trucks are worth 3 victory points, and any negative victory point tiles are worth -3 victory points. Step 3, the counter track. Score the victory points from the topmost covered space on your counter track. Step 4, score your Arabica tracks. If you've reached the 2nd space on all, you would score 3 points. If you've reached the 3rd place on all, you would get 7 points. If you've reached the 6th space on any of them, you would get 6 points each. And then if you are at the end, you would get +4 to that 6 points. Step 5, score milestones. Step 6, score contracts. You would gain victory points for each of your completed contracts. Step 7, score coffee bars. You would score the victory points from the counters that you've placed on the coffee bars. Step 8, score coffee bar majority. The most in a column scores 4 points, and the second most scores 2 points. The highest number going down the column breaks ties. And then step 9, score your plantations and buildings. The value that they are worth is on your player board. Then after you add all of the victory points up, the player with the most victory points is the most successful trading company and wins Coffee Traders.